So it's 1997, and I'm on a blind date with the tall, thin, good looking guy that has an attention getting laugh. 3 days later, we take an adventurous skydive from an airplane about 10,000 feet. Later that evening, we're sitting at my home on what was once my 70s orange and green sofa, now a reupholstered white contemporary couch for a fresh start, much like I tried to reinvent my single life. I'm 48, he's 56, and the couch is 22. Toasting with a glass of Chardonnay, we begin talking. He says that after his divorce, he started taking an over-the-counter drug to help him sleep. He thought the pills affected him because he isn't as passionate about things he once loved, like hunting and fishing. And he doesn't have the same sexual drive. I wonder, why is he telling me this? What does this mean? Well, we didn't overthink our courtship, and neither of us could stay away from each other. We married anyway. We hiked in Yosemite, danced under the sky, and traveled some. But just 5 years into our glorious marriage, Mark showed subtle signs of short-term forgetfulness, with him repeating questions and me repeating answers. He forgot how to use words he once knew, replacing them with others that made no sense. Lost in space, like him in a free fall into another world. I guess the plan God had in mind was for me to be my husband's guardian, because that's what I became. In 2006, he was diagnosed with early onset dementia, the kind that turned to Alzheimer's. I was 56, he was 64, and now the couch didn't matter. You can imagine how we felt waiting in waiting rooms next to the age group in their 80s and 90s. I observed the complications these patients and caregivers experienced with faraway stoic faces that tried to navigate in their new world. I questioned my faith, asking God, what did I do wrong? At first, I thought this was a prison. Instead, my faith kept me free, but it wasn't easy at times. We were in this together. There was no other way. I chose to quit work and collected my Social Security early at 62. It was the right decision and the most important thing I ever did, because he needed me. He relied on me. I was his security blanket. My love was in and out of the hospital 4 times in 4 months because of excruciating pain and increasing mobility problems. On his first hospital visit, his reports looked normal. So the hospital released him with an order for physical therapy. At the skilled nursing facility, I visited every day, sometimes evenings, and I realized the ratio between staff to the resident was too low. I saw some caregivers work double shifts, and they were overwhelmed. My husband was private and became combative when the nurses tried to change his underwear, so they couldn't. He told them he would do it, but instead, one time I found him wearing 3 pairs of wet underwear, one on top of the other. Once, he hadn't taken his pills. I saw them on the floor. One night, he lay on his hospital bed, propped up on pillows, and I lay on the recliner next to him watching a TV show, while we smelled the antiseptics, heard the machinery ticking, and the staff rushing in the hallway. He turned to look at me and he said, "Oh, honey, this is a great vacation." Startled, I went with it and said, "Yes, it is." Often I had to attend to his needs until the nurse came in. They were just too busy. He had the same pain on his 4th hospital visit and could not move. I stood next to him in the emergency hallway while he lay on the stretcher waiting for his examination. The hospitalists and nurses tried to examine him in the crowded open hallway, and he became combative and pushed them away. One of the nurses hollered, "He did that last time." In my husband's state, all he understood, they invaded his privacy. His chart should have at least indicated he came from a memory care assisted living. Later, the scans and x-rays showed he had bilateral bacterial pneumonia, needed an oxygen tank, and was admitted to the hospital. The next day, the hospitalist walked outside my husband's room into the hallway and informed me that he needed a feeding tube for a swallowing problem. It didn't seem right. Mark overheard and later said, I don't want a bird feeder. The doctor never disclosed he would only live 6 days to 6 months, and that a feeding tube would only prolong his death. It was the candid discharge nurse who did. She suggested hospice care. Confronting the doctor, I say, "Do you concur with the nurse's suggestion?" "Yes," he replies, and refuses to look at me. Red lava heat burned from my heart and surfaced to my face while I held my disgust, realizing it may have been difficult for him to tell me. On the nurse's advice, we brought him home to the room with the view of climbing roses and giant sequoia trees. His favorite music of Neil Diamond and Tony Bennett played in the background for 18 days. Our family watched him go from talking and smiling to his signal of waving his hands for more medication, and lastly, to stillness. After my husband's death, I received messages from him. It started with a dream. I awakened at 3 a.m. The familiar tenderness of his body behind mine pressed up against my back with his arms wrapped around me. I felt a tingling jolt, and I heard a sound like a metallic echo vibration. My husband also sent periodic messages through the air by way of his favorite cologne. This realization gave me a sense he communicated with me. God gave him a pass to let me know he made it. Ultimately, it was my faith that kept me going. I believe God sent me my husband, and he picked me to look out for him. So that's my story. My mission is to help bring awareness about this disease. Unless your family member or your spouse knows about it, the general public doesn't know about it. I learned many things during my journey about dementia and Alzheimer patients. They lose their passions and are aloof. Keep them social and active. They have difficulty handling financial matters. Use online banking. Don't order checks sent through the mail because they will hoard things. They want no one to know about their illness. Please share it with family and friends. It helps to have support. Suppose they're in assisted living or a facility. Through no fault of anyone, there is not enough staff to patient. Be present to check in on your loved one. Hospice care at home or a facility is a personal decision. It is a demanding and emotional responsibility to navigate the pain management of your loved one's death at home. Before your marriage, consider a prenup that addresses your loved one's financial needs and future care. I want to suggest some things because of my experience to healthcare providers and hospital staff. Provide a questionnaire to the patient's family member on admittance to a healthcare facility to indicate their special needs. Admission staff, please redline a memory loss patient file for a private room for a patient who can't be left alone, who might wander, fall, or has privacy concerns. Doctors, please be more direct and honest about a patient's prognosis. After he passed, I did some research that I'd like to share with you. The Alzheimer's statistics approximately are 44 million worldwide, with 5.5 million in the United States, of which 5.3 million are people over the age of 65, 200,000 are younger. A study on early onset dementia done by Blue Cross Blue Shield revealed that diagnosis rates for adults ages 30 to 64 went up 200%. Alzheimer Association International Conference in 2019 reported that sleeping aids often or almost always contribute to the risk of developing dementia at 45% more likely than those who took them rarely. Now here's an update on me. I no longer have that white sofa that would have been about 46 years old. I won't be disclosing my age. I haven't been on any more skydives. Instead, I choose to embrace the gift to share our message. Thank you.
In our world today, there's so much early onset Alzheimer's as well as traditional Alzheimer's. And people don't know about it in general. And the more we can know about it to identify it and get help sooner, and to keep in mind the caregivers, that it's so important. So I'm grateful for this book. I think it will really help make a difference in our society today. Thank you.
I identified with Felicity completely. I had the care of my mother who had dementia for 10 years, and I experienced exactly the same things. There was lack of knowledge and lack of understanding, and for both sides, from the caregiver side to the hospital side. And information really needs to be out there. Resources need to be out there. It's a hard journey to go through that, but it's a rewarding one, because if you spend that time and you carry it all the way through till their passing, you do feel gratified because you've taken care of them and you've helped them through. I look forward to anything she puts out that's helpful, and any way that more people can learn about this disease, because it's difficult for all people. Thank you.
So I could really identify with Felicity's talk, because my father had early Alzheimer's and dementia for the last part of his life. And my sister and I were his caregivers. My mother had passed away. He was single at that point. And it was devastating. And I remembered him when he was in his prime, when I was growing up and whatnot, and to see the way he deteriorated over time. So this is a very serious issue, and it's a very serious issue in a lot of families. And, you know, I hope I don't get it, but we never know for sure. So this was a very informative talk, and she's a saint of a woman for taking care of her husband the way she did. I really admire her for that. Thank you.